This is Shenea Stiletto, and welcome to a solo episode of the Circuspreneur Podcast, sponsored by StageLink.com. And this is an episode where I'm going to reflect a little bit on the Diddy verdict, the Diddy and Cassie case that was released today. The jury came to a conclusion after a few months of trial. And this was a very popular case. I mean, for those of us, I'm sure you have at least seen a little blip of it if you've not been like super following it super close. And it's interesting because I don't usually, dissect popular cases like this on the podcast. I reference them from time to time, but this one, for those of you who know my own personal story as a survivor of UC gymnastics and going through really horrific experiences where I was abused by those in positions of authority and within a really unique environment. As a young gymnast on the road to trying to achieve my dreams. And so I wanted to comment on this case because I thought it's so interesting. We continue to see these cases that highlight the abuses of power by those in positions of authority in really unique environments, specifically entertainment and the performing arts or the niche, I would say, arts environments. And these cases are really crazy and really out there and really salacious for folks. But I think when you're someone like me who is a survivor of a really prolific case, and those of us as survivors of using gymnastics, I mean, so many of these cases to me, I just am like, yeah, I totally get it. I see how this can happen, and I see how easy it is, when people are like, how is there just so many victims? Because again, I lived this as a little kid and I saw people from all ages and all, backgrounds be so overly invested in an environment because it was unique. And I speak about that a lot in the podcast, about the circus arts and the performing arts and the entertainment world really operating on just like a completely different planet and on a completely different tier of sanity, and why that's such a big problem. And, because we unfortunately get people like Sean Combs or like Diddy, whatever you want to call him. He goes by so many names, Puffy, and then we're now seeing cases being actually tried in court, and now they're up against the law. Some of them are up against new laws. Some of them, they're trying to apply existing laws to these cases that may not really fit. And, for those of you who have tuned in, I'm sure you're just as disappointed as I am about what he was not held accountable for and not found guilty on. And there's so much debate right now around that. I really wanted justice for his victims as a survivor myself who has been through the legal criminal justice system and how brutal it is and how challenging it is and what it takes to go through that year after year. I went through over almost 10 years of the legal process to get people held accountable. So imagine, I'm not dwindling or putting down this case, but imagine this case has been tried for a few months, and Cassie's civil case, she didn't actually have to do a civil case. She she got a settlement from him prior to that and didn't have to go to court to hold him accountable civilly. And I'm so glad that he was held accountable criminally. Now, he was found guilty. He was found guilty for really like much lesser charges. And again, there's so much debate around what he should have been held accountable for. I am, disappointed that he wasn't held accountable for the higher charges. And for more serious crimes, I think that he deserves to spend decades in prison for everything that he's done because he's been victimizing women and men for like over 30 years. And the interesting thing is because I've been in entertainment and things like that and connected in entertainment and been in LA for so many years, like I have heard things about him for for years, about, you know, brutal experiences that, so and so that, heard or knows somebody directly, kind of connected to that. And it's always just like allegedly, but it's crazy, and I wouldn't call myself someone who's like well connected, but LA in the entertainment world is really like that. I mean, you're going to know someone who has worked for someone who has worked for someone. And and people tell the truth. And so again, I'm experiencing that. I had, again, zero connection to being able to do anything. I mean, this was like someone telling me about something that they knew about, through a whatever type of grapevine, and at what year or point that situation had occurred, and these allegations against him, which at that time were never allegations, they're just rumors and stories. And I talk about that again a lot within the entertainment environment and performing arts environment, how people do not, and in gymnastics and in the sporting world, that people don't report abuses. They don't report crimes. They don't come forward when they are victimized or when they are incredibly close to a situation where they could be instrumental in helping someone survive a situation or getting them out of that. But I mean, we saw the like ridiculous intimidation tactics that someone on Diddy's level was able to do. I mean, he's and this is all verified in the court, in the court case, and in the trial, and that is evidence, of these extreme intimidation tactics, or being able to pay people off, or being able to intimidate witnesses, or being able to use violence to gain silence against victims. And I'm speaking so much as a survivor of Fusey Gymnastics. I advocate a lot in DC, and I work behind the scenes with a lot of policy to protect survivors and to protect victims, and, to be able to have better defenses in these cases and in these trials as well, because these people are so wealthy and have so much influence. It's so challenging to be able to get justice. I mean, I can't tell you what it means just for a defendant to have just like a good lawyer, and what their chances are of getting out of charges when they are just like downright guilty. And so that's a challenging aspect, again, from someone who has been in these cases civilly as well as criminally for years, and working on policy reform, and seeing where, looking from the outside in, and wanting things to go a certain way, or and again, court is very orchestrated. And there are certain things that you even find out later on, or certain things that aren't admissible in court, or again, certain charges that just are not going to necessarily stick, unfortunately for this particular person, um, or maybe shouldn't stick, right? There's so many things, but I'm talking specifically about this. I could go into like a 5-hour podcast at this point, with how much I've been privy to, and how many victims I've met over the years that have survived, just unimaginable crimes against them, and some of them have never had their day in court. And some of them, their perpetrators have never been found, or they never reported the crime, or they just weren't able to get any justice in that way because the courts failed them. And then again, the cases where there is justice, and so there is some element of justice obviously to this case, and I'm grateful for that. I'm interested to see how many years he will do in prison. But what I really, again, wanted to speak upon is just the outrageous abuses that we hear happening in entertainment and in the performing arts. And why is that something that continues to happen? I mean, again, I think we're finally seeing a new dawn where folks that have been doing this for so many years are in some capacity, being brought to justice in some ways, thankfully. But, these environments, just people act with so much impunity, and, and people in positions of authority in the arts and in the performing arts and entertainment. And again, there's a huge attack on the arts right now. So this is not, in a way trying to attack the performing arts. This is talking about how much more support we need in the arts because we are an afterthought so much. And we're just not in an environment that, people are really looking at and nobody takes us seriously. It's unfortunate. But it's true. They, you know, uplift everyone so much in the arts, but then don't care that you don't have regulations or have like extensive rights or that you feel that you were isolated in an environment and then you try to go and plead your case and people just kind of like don't even know what to do with your case because they're like, I don't know this system, I don't understand the environment that you're in. It was just like being a survivor of USA Gymnastics. I can't tell you how many investigators I've spoken to that this was now their job to investigate and do all these cases and they just couldn't even connect point A to point B because they were like, I just don't really understand this environment. And that's their job and that's their career. They are a specialist. And of course they're getting more and more people that are much better educated. But these are unique environments and they are difficult. They are difficult to decipher. They are difficult if you've not been around them. And so you see how someone like him is able to just exist for years and for years and for years, with, people again, just making the victims the fault, right? Now you have someone who is holding you for ransom for all sorts of things, for your career, for your livelihood, for your art, legally getting you to sign contracts where you feel bound, doing things behind the scenes criminally that people don't know about to intimidate you, that keeps you in this sort of space. And we all know how it feels, what grooming is like, and Stockholm syndrome, and again, I've experienced all those different elements. I have dear friends that have all experienced that too over the years, where you feel absolutely trapped in your circumstances of being abused. And there's so many different components to being victimized and to convincing yourself that you're okay, that you can make it through this, that you can use this situation to your advantage. I mean, all of these very, and people are thinking this as children, right? I mean, remember, you have children that think this way when they're being victimized, even if they don't really understand it. They have to rationalize it years later of like, this is where I was coming from. I was making sure this person like didn't ruin all that my family and myself have worked for. You have those sentiments, and until folks are honest on a continuous basis about what it's like to have those kinds of thoughts, to have that reality as well, where you are up against people that are maybe going to blackmail you for life. And you don't know what that kind of blackmail would look like because these people are so incredibly wealthy and they're so incredibly connected. And who comes out if no one else joins you? Losing out. And the feeling of losing out on your dreams and on things that you want, and then also, too, us continuing to put up these environments and make them so special and coveted, and why that needs to stop. It needs to stop. We need to stop invoking all of this, fame and specialness and, social media followings and anything that's going to make you special. Hold on to that for dear life because that's it. And that's your ticket, and that's going to make you happy, and that's going to you know and I'm not talking about the fact that so many people, sometimes that's your ticket out of poverty, and we have to look at that as well, especially within the circus arts and the performing arts, that your arts career is literally your ticket to a better passport, and that's society. It doesn't mean that your passport or where you were born is anything less, but that is what society has built, the system around you. And how challenging that is when you have so much at stake to stay in situations that are abusive. And it's different when you're a child. You don't even have the verbiage to communicate what's happening to you and why it's wrong. And thinking about the victims in this case, and how young they were when they got into, this situation with somebody, and I always, say, look at this situation that Cassie was in with Diddy, where it was like, that's your coach essentially, and you're a young athlete. And then they're grooming you and setting you up for all of this success and taking advantage of you in the process. And, you're 19 years old, you're 18 years old. And, some victims in those situations have married their coaches after, years and years and years of being groomed and being taken advantage of at 18, 19 years old. And then, or at 16, 17, and then they go on, at 28, 29, and there you go. It's almost 10 years, it's almost 11 years. So again, there's so many different motivations, unfortunately, for these situations, and what makes them work and what makes them last so long and what makes them tick. And the judgments that people bring on victims, and the judgments that people have just within society of, that person did that thing to get ahead, or that person did that, whatever. And sometimes it maybe is that in certain ways. Sometimes it is, I'm going to do this because I need to keep this job. And I don't want to go back to where I used to be living. And unfortunately, putting people in those positions of survival is sad. It's really sad. It's really sad when people feel like they have to do things to hurt themselves. But what's worse is the people that perpetuate those acts against those people that are so desperate, because you have a choice. You're the one with the ultimate choice. That person feels like they're in a situation where they have no choice but to be exploited. And how sad and horrible is that? But you're in the position of power to say, like, no, I won't exploit you. I'm just going to help you. Like, you don't have to do anything horrible for me to do my job, or for me to, to be decent to you. For me to not take advantage of you. Where is the responsibility in these situations? But again, when you get so corrupted by being special, by being in a position that you don't want anyone, to get in the way of your power. When you've gotten into a space that is so coveted and so glamorous and so interesting, and that's why, so many of us speak out about, like, were the medals worth it? Absolutely not. If you could do it all over again and trade those experiences, and would you still, but the other sad part of that is you were just going for your dream. You were just, let's remind everyone, if you were, you wanted to be a circus performer, you want to be an entertainer, you want to be an actor, you want to be a singer, you want to be a performer, like, you are just innocently trying to follow your dream, follow the essence of what you want, and then all of a sudden it just becomes so corrupted. And and I know for folks, that get caught up and they're victimized and all those things, it's like after so many years you don't even recognize yourself, and then you don't know even how to get yourself out of a situation. And what is the number one thing? Everybody thinks that you are going to be blamed. They are going to blame you. You come forward, they will blame you. You either stayed too long, you didn't stay long enough, you didn't help more people, you didn't say enough. All of those things that you are inflicted with as a victim, as hopefully a survivor. If you've made it out before someone has, maybe, made it so that you're no longer on this planet. Because they victimized you so harshly before you could even get justice for yourself, or stand up for yourself, or stand up for others. The complexities of these cases. But I wanted to speak to that. It's not something that I normally do, but again, as a survivor myself, and being around these environments and wanting justice, and seeing that, these crimes are so difficult to continue to prosecute. We're in a society where, again, we do not take sex crimes seriously enough. We do not take abuses against children sexually seriously enough. We do not take offenses in that stratosphere serious enough. And again, because sometimes there's so many wounds that are unseen. There's so many emotional and traumatizing scars that are invisible when you are moving through your life, and people think that you're okay because that's something that you can hide, unless it's completely just overtaking your life mentally, and it's completely destroyed your mental health, and then we start calling people crazy. when in fact they've just been horrifically victimized. And I have unfortunately been very close up for others in the process of people just thinking, what is wrong? What has happened to this person? And, it turns out that they were just so horrifically victimized. And, they have to find their way back to who they are and to health. And then they're just like this, like, just really incredible, wonderful, amazing person once they get the help that they need. And so, if you, again, this is why we are pursuing policy for the circus arts, because I feel very strongly, and so many people do, that we need policy. We need new policies within all of these industries: entertainment, performing arts, circus arts, to protect those working within the industry, just like they did in the fashion industry with the Fashion Workers Act, to protect those vulnerable within these different, unique environments. And we need to have people at the seat of the table that are from our industries so that we can help to shape these narratives, so that we can get more increased regulations, so that there are more, there's more resources that understand us and that understand our cases. And so that we can redefine what this industry looks like. I'm so looking forward to presenting at PAMA, the Performing Arts Medicine Association Conference, in DC coming up soon. And I'll be presenting three policies that, again, we continue to advocate for. It's the Circus Arts Category Recognition Bill by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Safe Art or Safe Circus Act, that would be an extension or branch or division of the U.S. Center for Safe Sport, and also to the Circus Workers Act, which would be a labor rights, union rights, workers' rights, and increased protections legislation for the circus arts worker in America. So thank you so much for joining in to this solo episode. And if you need help, reach out and advocate for yourself. If you are in, a difficult position, there are a lot of resources on RAIN. RAIN is a phenomenal resource for any listener that's being abused or is afraid for somebody else being abused. They provide so many resources. They have a great hotline where you can get the help and the support, even if you want to stay anonymous and you just need to share something that's happening to you or going on with somebody that you know or that you love or that you care about, or someone that you just see in passing that you think needs help. So again, my name is Shenea Stiletto. Thank you so much for joining in to this episode of the Circuspreneur Podcast. Until next time, please stay safe and stay healthy.